The question of security, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on general security preparations pre, during, and hopefully post this election. Tonight, a couple of thoughts around that. One, obviously, we still have a missing returning officer, Embakasi East, and that was a very worrying matter when it was first made public, and the family, talking to us also today, raising their concerns that they still haven't heard from their loved one. We have a matter in Narok where the tallying center there has been moved to Bomas because of a similar issue, and sporadic incidents here and there as well. Talk to me a little bit about what it takes to secure an election from a security perspective to ensure those working and involved in it feel comfortable and safe at all times.
I mean, as a human rights activist or defender, we are normally trained on how we conduct ourselves. And the saying that security begins with you is real, because as a human rights defender, there are things that I would not take for granted. Even at times, if I stamped my own feet on a rock, I would say, how come I was not conscious enough to see that, there was a rock ahead of me? But as an observer also with the African Union, because I've observed the elections for the AU, they say that security during an election should not be intrusive. In other words, if, for example, you are securing a polling station, there are people who have a history with security agencies. There are people who also know that they have not been leading crimeless lives. So there are people who are just suspicious. I've seen friends who even trying to tell them, I'm going to this court, can you accompany me? They have a problem with that. But with respect to Kenyan elections, and more so after the tragic loss of Muhando in the build-up to 2017 elections.
Chris Musando.
Chris Musando. Security, particularly amongst election officials, is a serious issue. And even here at Bomas, we have seen the commissioners every time urging people to avoid taking pictures of election officials, for the reason that they handle very sensitive matters that, have the capacity and potential to determine who gets into a position of power and influence. And of course, the influence that comes with the resources. And so elections in this country have become a matter of life and death. And so most people who put their life at risk by being election officials, unfortunately find themselves in the situation where, an election official in Embakasi East had found himself. There could be, I'm just saying, speculating, that if, for example, the election official we have had instances where an individual feels that they need to go in a secluded area so that nobody knows where they are. If there's a mechanism of relaying that to your next of kin, even if you don't trust anybody else, we encourage the election official to do so. From the information I have is that this election official got accompanied by a bodyguard
it's what was announced, actually.
Yes, to their home,
yes.
I think to change clothes and so on. And then later on, just making a few steps to answer a phone call has not been found. And I think that's really unfortunate. So it's really true that election officials need to be secured, not just from people who may not mean well, but even from candidates. We have seen some of them being harassed. We saw a bodyguard killed in Bungoma County of one of the candidates and so on. So we need to talk about the entire security in an area where elections are being managed, including here in Bomas. And you have seen a bit of motions here and there. And all of them related to
last night at a time like this,
exactly.
It may not have been possible to be here with what was happening.
I think it is something that, moving forward, the Election Commission needs to discuss extensively with security agencies that are responsible, because we need to collaborate with those who provide the physical security, those who man polling stations, and those who gather intelligence, because all these things are at times premeditated. In most instances, they are pre-planned, premeditated. And I think there has not been very, very a coordinated attempt to ensure that by the time elections are held, as we hope to hold the mini elections in Kakamega, in Mombasa.
That's correct.
There should be new information as it relates to any other information or tensions building around those elections and the intentions of key players, so that should there be any intention to, cause a disruption, hurt anybody, then that can be prevented, because security is about prevention. It's not about reacting after the fact. So I want to agree entirely with the issues that Ngasa movement raised. A lot of them remains unattended. Some of them, of course, have been resolved partly because of the relative openness with which, the IBC has treated the server this time around. We have not been told it is in Paris or any other capital for that matter. It has been accessed by all players. There have been concerns that maybe there was an attempt to, to breach it, but we got the assurance a day before yesterday that that did not succeed. And so we are generally happy that some improvements have been made. But by and large, and moving forward, I think as a country, the IBC needs to be a little more open. They need to be a little more open with their procurement of materials, because all these tensions you see around tallying centers, including at Bomas, start from the way in which materials were procured. There have been all these incidences where, some ballot papers have been discovered recently, as recently in Nairobi as a day before. That is uncalled for. All these, foreigners who are caught at the airport trying to come in with stickers. All that needs not to be matters that IBC reacts to, but IBC should really make it upfront that we are expecting these materials, they'll be delivered by so-and-so. Officials at the airport are informed so that, we do not end up with such encounters. I
think elections, by and large, as you've put it rightly, is a process.
It's a process.
And there should be checks and balances and 100% accountability, transparency.
Exactly.
And all the other factors that the Constitution mandates for elections to happen within each stage of that particular process. As we wind this down, a lot of pressure on IBC tonight. Many Kenyans wondering, will they push it to Tuesday? If that's what it takes, the numbers we have is that we still have another 77 constituencies to go. Will they announce tomorrow? From where you sit as civil society, what's your message to IBC tonight?
My message to IBC is that we have been able to do over 200 in the last 3 days. Those 3 days do not necessarily translate into another 3 days because we have done the bulk. And we started with a small capacity of workforce. Now we have a full workforce, and I want to be confident that, IBC must do what it can to be done with this process by mid-morning tomorrow, so that, latest by noon, Kenyans take their lunch knowing who will be in charge of the matters of the state for the next 5 years. Yes.
Okay. Super Churchill, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This is the Executive Director of the Kenya National Civil Society Center. We're just here, just outside that auditorium where the vote validation, the validation and verification of the Forms 34B and 34A that was brought in by the various returning officers continues. A very grueling task, as I'm sure you've imagined. It's taken about 3 days for 200 sets of results from those constituencies, from 200 constituencies, to be validated, verified, and announced, and another 77 to go. And we'll be right here, myself, together with Nimrod Tabu, to continue to update you even as we proceed. And of course, once that announcement is made by the chairperson, any aggrieved parties will have the next 7 days to move to court as per the Constitution. And the Constitution gives the courts that window of 14 days to hear any petition brought before them and bring a suitable ruling. And we'll also be speaking more about those timelines in our subsequent bulletin.